Yeah, Coach, I guess maybe just how would you assess the final scrimmage that you guys had on Saturday, just kind of maybe what stood out to you as you guys closed the spring there?
I thought the offense was in really good rhythm for the second Saturday in a row. Made a number of plays. The system was kind of working as far as tempo and spreading the ball around. We held after the first series a few defensive players, so that obviously helps in that situation. But I was very pleased with that. It was a good feeling coming out of, we actually threw 7-on-7 first, which we normally wouldn't do, just so Sam and really a number of other players, including Witt, were able to do that they wouldn't have been able to do team stuff. So that kind of felt good too, seeing everybody out there together.
Yeah, Lane, just the spring as a whole, did you get what you wanted out of it? What's your comfort level kind of going into the off season?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think when we decided, to take Sam, part of that was having to realize, okay, he was not going to, for the most part, be there in the spring, and that would have you have a certain feeling about spring, that he's not there, but understand it's, about the long term and what that looks like. So I think that played into a little bit, plus some other players not playing. And so I think when you add in him, the receiver, Witt, you're going to add some pieces back in where you're going to feel different, in the fall or even the summer. So, but I think the guys did a really good job buying in, working hard, really trying to do the right things, very little distractions from guys. That probably is, there's good and bad to everything. I think the no spring portal, obviously is bad in your first year because you'd like to have it. Now that you've been here for a while, to assess your roster and everything. But the good part is you don't have the problems that we had before. When everybody getting calls from other places and in the middle of spring ball already thinking about, are they going to be here, or they don't like their play time. So from that point, that helped limit distractions. So I thought they did a good job that way. I think we have a long ways to go with learning our systems inside and out and making sure that we're using players in the right spots and not just running our system, because that's what our system was in all phases.
So, Coach, how did Sam perform in the 7-on-7, and what does he still need to learn about when it comes to this offense?
Yeah, Sam did a good job. I mean, he only played 8 plays, but threw a touchdown on his first play, and a very deep ball that probably would have went for a touchdown, so that felt good. But he's doing a great job. I just met with him this morning on some things, and he's a really competitive, want to be great, want the team to be great. He's in a really good place that way, and just still working through his foot and getting out there and being able to play with the guys more.
Hey, Coach, I just want to ask you about a local kid, Bryson Martinez. Obviously, he was playing high school ball in the fall and immediately out here. How did he come along this spring? And did you see what they did with him at EA, all the different things, his skill set, catching, running, throwing?
Yeah, he has a really good skill set, really stood out, as a guy that eventually be a premier player. At one of the spots, probably left, but I was really pleased in that. You really don't know with high school kids. Like I say, everybody thinks you're supposed to, that every high school kid that's ranked this is going to be this, and they missed in the NFL in top 10 picks with all that information. So you never really know till you get them. And he's a guy, like I told our guys, that if you looked at him without ranks, any of that stuff, and said, hey, this is, one of the top guys in America, young players that we got, you would say that. So he's got a really high ceiling, really excited about that. That's one of those things as you get here, you're really hoping, even though you know some, that you have some really good young players on a roster. Your freshman class that already played there, and then the incoming one. And, because otherwise to get upperclassmen in 2-3 years from now, you'd have to go all portal to get them. So that was really good that he was part of that.
Hey, Coach, you had said at the start of spring that talking about no portal window after spring ball and this is it type thing. What's your evaluation now that you've had 15 practices, some injuries, all that where you're at depth-wise and kind of getting ready for the off season?
Yeah, I've been very open about that. I wish that there was another one. I've talked to coaches about that, and coaches that have been somewhere 2-3 years feel differently because they like that they have their whole roster and that they've evaluated it for a time. So they knew what was coming back before. They knew how it fit, how the players knew you. But in your first year, yeah, I don't think many coaches would say that, but if they were honest, they'd probably say that they wish there was one. But there isn't, and so, you got to look at it more like old college football, not the NFL, which otherwise it's become like the NFL, meaning you're moving through free agency, trying to improve your roster, where the old college way was this is what you had, period. There was no portal, and you got to develop those guys. So that's our challenge to our assistant coaches is, hey, there's nowhere to go, so let's make sure we're developing our guys the best we can and looking at what they can do, not what they can't do.
And then how much did Sam's involvement in spring, you talked about it last week, maybe just even being out there as kind of like a pseudo coach, how much does that expedite or kind of cut that learning curve of knowing your offense and everything to when he gets to fall camp and doesn't have as much on his shoulders?
Yeah, he's taking it very seriously. It's a lot to learn within the system, and he really spends a lot of time up here, and that's not easy. When you're not playing, it's a little bit harder, to stay locked in and go to walkthroughs and do all those things, but he's taking that very seriously. He's real serious about being great. Like I say all the time, we actually talked at length today about this. If we're in the team room and I said to all the players, how many of you love football? Every single one will raise their hand. Well, they don't. Some do. Most love what football gives them, whether that's the money, I can wear the gear around, I get the attention, I get social media. Very few of them really love the game, like the work that's within it. And Sam is that. We talked about it today. He loves to work. He loves to go home at night and spend more time on football and things he can develop, not just physically but mentally also.
Coach, along those lines, your impressions of the virtual reality tech over here and how the three quarterbacks can utilize that this summer to get better?
I think it's really valuable. I think Jack is extremely valuable here for all sports, but speak for ourselves. And what he does and his team of people is really a secret weapon, for preparation, for in-season preparation, but also in recruiting that parents see that they get that here and that they have access to that. So I think that's really, really critical for a lot of positions.
Lane, when Aiden Anding was injured, you mentioned cornerback depth was a concern. That was right at about the halfway point of spring. In the second half, were there any corners that maybe took advantage of those reps that you feel maybe made the most of that opportunity?
Yeah, I think that that's a huge emphasis for us into this offseason to look at because some guys did some decent things, but nobody stepped up to make you feel great in that. And so we've got a lot of work to do in that. And that's what I said, there's no portal to go to. So we've got to develop our guys and get the most out of them and look at what coverages we're playing with everybody and all those things because, again, it's different. This is your roster. This is what you're set with. There's nowhere to go. So how are you going to – what programs are going to make the best, even utilizing whether that's position changes, whether that's different schemes, like I said earlier, to make the most of what you have.
Coach, what were some of the first things you wanted to establish with this strength and conditioning program? And is Nick Savage, is he just bringing in the exact same thing he had at Ole Miss, basically?
Yeah, Nick's done a great job. Back to Mississippi State, then Florida, then with us at the last place and now here. And he does a great job because he has a really good system in place, but also the players know how much he cares, the time he invests with them. When I meet with the players individually here post-spring, already one of the common things they say when I ask about the program, how do you feel about things, is they talk about Coach Savage and the change in the mindset, but that how hard they work, but they feel like he's in there with them. He's not telling them to do things he's not doing himself as far as commitment to the program. So he's been phenomenal. I'd heard about him before. Been great since we've had him. I've even heard from programs where he was before that haven't had him since, obviously, and have felt a difference in the program because of that. It says a lot.
Hey, Coach Kiffin, right here in the front. I've been asked a lot about, how y'all doing this spring, and it's spring ball, so I've been mostly positive. And the response I get a lot is, well, they have a $40 million NIL roster. They should be good. Is that a short-sighted way to look at things in the transfer portal, the way the roster is constructed?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question because I think that is what a lot of people assume. There's a lot that goes into a team, and I'm not confirming or denying numbers. I'm never going to get into numbers up here. But a lot goes into that of making the right team, but then once they're there, also breaks too. Injuries, breaks in games, scheduling's a major part. So much is about wins and losses, which I understand, and this team won this many games, but within that and within that roster is how do they play together? What breaks do they get? How well does the quarterback play, especially? Because you can do all these things and have these spots, and you'll see it around the country. Look at the draft. There's some teams that have a ton of draft picks, didn't have great quarterback play, and then their record's reflective of it. The record's not reflective of people that don't have a right guard playing well, but have a really good roster around them. So remembering how valuable that position playing is to that. So that's not a recipe. Wins and losses are never ranked by payroll. A lot of things, you got to do a lot of work within that and get the right guys, and they got to mesh together. And like I said, scheduling is so much more important than people think. And who you play, what time do you play? Is their quarterback happen to be out that week? Or around the country, it's just different than the NFL. You got these teams, like I saw the thing somebody sent me where you got teams playing where they play their entire conference schedule and play like 5 to 9 draft picks on the whole schedule. Like we play that like a lot in one game. So that's a big difference. I know it's been a topic discussion why they need to figure out how to change the value of schedule and how much that means, because I joke and I say to you and I are whatever, like pickleball partners or tennis, whatever it is. We can schedule in this room of all these teams and pick those teams over there, and we can go 12-0. We're the same team. We go play them and play the same games. We might be 8-4. So it's just our sport hasn't figured that out, and I feel like basketball has.
And just kind of, what do you like about yours and Charlie's working relationship, and how much of this offseason is kind of dealing with the old school football that you have now and figuring out what works for this offense?
Yeah, Charlie does a great job. Time in relationships is really important in any relationships, but especially in coaching, as you look at with your head coach, and that's the coordinator on your side of the ball. And over time, our dynamics have totally changed over time of, who's calling the plays to now he calls them to he runs the meetings, like he's in charge of it. And that was a good progression over time to get to that. But also because you worked so long together, he doesn't have to ask things that he had to ask initially because he's really smart. So he picks up on things. And he's taken it and ran with it and done an amazing job. And so I love Charlie, Jen's kids, but I love his story, guy didn't play, but then just totally invested into coaching. And yes, he has this great brain and this amazing IQ, but the guy grinds, man. He works at his game. There's never a year, even though we got all these top stats in the country every year, he still goes into every off season. How can we do things better? What can we watch? Where can we go visit? I just love that growth mindset because that's what we want in our building. How do we use him? We just continue to always work on it. He goes and does some recruiting, but last 2 days, so we've already been in there watching cut-ups from it and what can we do better and what players can we utilize in different areas, reevaluate the players, re-rank them, and do all those things.
Lane, after 15 practices, I guess what would you say are the prevailing questions that you still have about this team?
Oh, there's a lot of those. I mean, we haven't even tackled yet, so how well are we going to tackle on defense? How well are the backs, all skill, but especially backs, going to do when they're getting tackled? We got some players coming back from injuries, so there's a lot. It was really good to have, but I still feel like we need fall camp and summer so much to get things to where we need them to be.
Lane, do you wish that you had another week of spring practices, or do you wish that there was more opportunities that you could have with your team between now and August, whether it be some sort of mini camp or, I know that they've given you all a little bit more that your core staff can have, but.
Yeah, I think we're in a good place with how much they give us. I just really struggling to see another week. Yeah, it would be good, but at the same time, I get so concerned about injuries, especially after we already had two. Again, because there's no other portal to go to. So the more you have them, the more injuries that you have, you got nowhere to go. And now you pay the players so much too. I think we'll actually go backwards and be more like the NFL, and I bet eventually probably do less, especially if there's ever a union, and you get real contracts figured out, just because of how much value there is in a player and then losing them in the offseason.
Yeah, Coach, obviously a pretty big story hit college football yesterday with the Texas Tech quarterback and what he's going through. Just curious if you see that as maybe like an opportunity to kind of remind your players or just have conversations with your players about some of the pitfalls that can kind of come through, situations like that. Just curious on your thoughts there.
Yeah, I don't obviously know the details of it, so I'm not going to speak on that specifically. But, we try to educate our guys with speakers that come in, examples over time, and, just to try to prevent it, because there's a lot of stuff on these guys nowadays and a lot of pressure and different things. So we just really constantly try to educate them and work with them.
It's obviously a long way off, but I just curious your thoughts of playing a team like Clemson first game in your stadium, not the neutral site thing, and how does that resonate with the players and the staff preparing all summer, knowing you're playing a team like that first?
Yeah, fair question. That just seems so far away from me from a work standpoint of how much we do every day compared to how long that is. Really cool in that way to have an exciting premier program to open with at home. Not being on the road, for a first game, that's exciting. Having never coached in here on the home side, like many of our coaches, so that's exciting. But that's a long ways to go, and obviously a premier program, and Dabo's won as much as anybody in college football, and probably more than anybody active.
Coach, with Weston Davis at right tackle, what do you and Eric Wolford like about him at that spot, and what areas do you think he still needs to grow on?
He's got to work on consistency, like a lot of young players, and playing down to down. He's done some really good things, flashed at times. That's why we have him there. I have high expectations for him, but he's done some good things. But he's got a lot of work to do, to get to that consistent level that we need to play, because again, we talked about the quarterback playing well and how valuable that is to teams and wins, and you see it in the NFL. They'll have a premier quarterback and he'll get hurt, and all of a sudden that coach and the rest of the team's not very good. Well, who protects them? The tackles. That's why they make a lot of money. So him playing well is very critical. You look at our blueprint from where he just came. We had two tackles play really, really well in pass protection all year long for the quarterback, and helps the quarterback play really well.
Where are you at on the physicality on this team?
Yeah, I don't know enough without the tackling. They've done what we've asked. We progressed them in that, in a different style of practice than they were used to, and they responded after time. It takes a little bit of time, but we'll find out more about that.
Then you just talked a lot about seeing guys up here late at hours. Now that it's, I guess, their team over the summer, are you confident that will continue?
I hope so. I think that, can't ever just think that's over. We constantly meet with them, constantly try to motivate them, constantly try to show them why that's so important. I even use examples of like the last draft and guys that came to us with a draft grade much lower than where they just got drafted, over time, over years, using examples because of what they put in, and not having a pro day draft mentality, meaning that's like, they all want to get this mentality when the pro day comes up, the combine, like, man, now I got to do all these things. Okay, well, why weren't you doing them now so that your film's really good? And also that's what's said about you. So when the scouts come in, man, you don't go undrafted even though you're a premier talent because your character grade's so bad and your work ethic. So, quit waiting till then to start doing the things.
I'm curious just your thoughts on, like at practice, when y'all go team and you're running tempo, there's never like a run that play back or like stop and coaching them up in between.
Yeah.
Does that put more on film, and is that an adjustment for players, everyone but Winnie and TJ, I guess, and then even defensive staff?
Yeah, no, that's a really good observation, and it is challenging for them. When you're not used to that, that's just a different style. And I talked about why we do that. So, if I stop with you as the linebacker coach and you're the linebacker, well, now everybody's got to stop. And I got to restart the play or coach this thing. So we talk about coaching effort first and then coaching that on the fly. You'll even see like the screens are up there replaying the play. So on the sidelines, things can be coached with the other group, or if a player is taken out for an adjustment. Because if we slow that down, then it's the whole conditioning part, physically and mentally, that I think is really important. So we got the tape to coach it off of too.
Just curious, your thoughts on Dashawn Spears. What is he bringing to the safety position and his playmaking ability?
Yeah, he's really critical, in our system and where that spot plays. You play so many perimeter plays. And so if you can blitz like he can, cover and have length, because the length's really important there to play blocks, to get hands on things in RPOs. He's really valuable and really pleased with him. Probably one of the more pleasing, improvements of a player since we've gotten here.
I mean, you talked about receivers earlier. I'm paraphrasing, but you kind of said you went numbers so as not to spend your whole cap on maybe one or two guys, and you hope 4 to 6 maybe emerge. Do you think in the spring you saw enough from that group to feel confident that you have those 4 to 6 guys on your roster?
I can see it. It's not there yet. I think with everything, there's a cost and benefit. I said the route that we go doesn't get you as excited as if you have the, 2 premier high-end ones that come in and you put all your money up top. Well, that looks a lot better to you when the first unit goes out there. But this way, what you hope is that, okay, they can play more players and keep their snap count down and then be better in the middle and later in the season. But that position takes a little bit of time, too. There's a lot of stuff that goes in that, playing in this tempo and offense. And, they were disappointed at first, but at the same time, too, they probably improved as much as any group from 1 to 15 practice.
Hey, Coach, you talked about Richard Anderson at Edna Carr a few weeks back about how well he was doing in the spring. We got to see video of him in the scrimmage. I mean, I knew that he had a pick 6 catch for a touchdown last year, but is he someone who definitely can maybe we see on offense a few times this spring, fall?
Yeah, he has a really unique skill set. I sent that clip to his coach, in high school because we had talked about that coming out. He's just really unique. He's one of those really unique, high-end, top first-round potential that no matter what you coach, you can't coach guys in. At that position, you can't coach guys into that. And he has that. So, and you even see it like how he jumped up. That was his idea. He wanted to go into the one-on-ones and run a route, and you just saw how good he looked doing it. He's really gifted. All right, guys, thanks.
Thank you, Coach.